Slapshot is a game that was originally published by Avalon Hill Games almost 30 years ago. It has had several reincarnations ever since, and now we have a new edition by Columbia Games. In this game, the players take the role of managers of hockey teams, and they are managing these players, which are a gallery of funny, goofy characters. It is important to remember that in this game you are the manager, not the captain of the team. That means that once the challenge starts, things are going to be out of your hands. What you do is you scout around, you're looking for good players, you try to put together a good team. You're trying to keep your team together, but then again, how the team performs when it is tossed into the arena is not necessarily up to you to decide. It is a game that is very simple. You can play with your kids, plays with 2 players, maybe it can be a play with your spouse, but it goes up to 6 players with the components in this box. I've heard that people played up to 10 players, I don't know about that, but definitely is a game that you can bring to a game night. Of course, the big question is this a fun game? Is this a fun game that you want to play with your kids, with your spouse, or with your game group? Today, we're going to try to answer that. This is the rule book for the game, or I should say the rule sheet, because this is pretty much all that the rule book is about. These are not even rules, so very simple to learn. What you find in the box is a group of 6 standard Columbia blocks that you use to keep score. You have a board where you will place the markers to keep track of the score. Each time that a player wins a game, will advance his block by 1 on that board. And then you have a deck of cards, which actually is divided in 3 smaller decks. A deck of goalies, 1 of defensemen, and 1 of forwards. At the beginning of each game, a player will draw a goalie, 2 defensemen, and 3 forwards. Of course, these are drawn randomly. This is going to be the composition of the team of that player. The player will get new cards throughout the game, but you will always have 1 goalie, 2 forwards, and 2 defensemen, and 3 forwards. You will always exchange a goalie for a goalie, a defenseman for a defenseman. No other combination is possible. And as you can see, these cards have different numerical values. The higher the value, the better the player, the better that card. During your turn, you can do 1 of 3 things. You can simply exchange 1 of your cards with 1 from the deck. You place your card at the bottom of the corresponding deck, a forward for a forward, a defenseman for a defenseman, and you get another card. Sometimes things will be good. In this case, I put a 4 there, and I got a 7 in return. Sometimes you are taking a chance and things don't go that well, and you get a worse card. Other thing that you can do during your turn is to force another player to trade with you. You choose another player, the player will show you his cards face down, you choose 1 randomly, and then you have to give in return a card of the same type. So actually, if you have cards of very low value, that may be good because you may get a better card, and at the same time you may get the opponent stuck with a low value card. So you get a better hand and you mess up the hand of the opponent, but it is not certain. Suppose you have bad cards in 1 or 2 categories, but you still have a good card in another category, then it may be that you do get the good card from the opponent and get a bad one in return, but you may get a mediocre card on a worse card, and you will be forced to give the opponent a better card. In this case, for example, suppose my opponent gives me a 3 blue, and then at that point I have to give a blue in return. I can give this card, but I still got a worse card that I had before. So trading is a higher risk, potentially higher reward move. Then the other thing that you can do is you challenge a player. You choose a player, and the player has to play a game with you. To play a game, both players will have to put their team face down in a row. Or you can also have both players preparing a deck and then flipping their cards one at a time. The important thing is that once the players commit to a certain order, they cannot change the order in which they play the cards. So either you put them face down like that in a row, or you use decks, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that you cannot change the order. Once players have committed to an order, they flip their cards one at a time and they compare the results. They compare the cards individually and they will try to score points, score goals. Let me just show you all the cards and then we see how this works. Alright, when you have two players that are not goalies and that are facing each other, then simply put the player with the highest number scores a goal in that position. For example, this couple of cards here will score a goal for this player. In this case, this player wins again. Here, this player wins again. Wow, this player is particularly strong because 7 more than 5, 5 more than 2. When you have a player that has a red cross there, that indicates that that player is a bruiser. So numerically speaking, the encounter is resolved. Normally in this case, this player would win. In this case, this player would lose. You resolve normally, but after this has been resolved, the player that has faced the bruiser is eliminated, and the owner player will get another card of the same type to replace that one. Also, normally cards that are facing a goalie do not score, so sometimes your goalie will be able to stop a particularly powerful card, like in this case, or even in this case, just a 3 is able to stop an 8. When a goalie is facing a non-goalie card, you ignore the printed value. The fact that he's a goalie is all that matters. In this case, for example, that was a great stop, but if a goalie is facing another goalie, then you look at the numerical value and the goalie that has the better value scores a goal against the other one. So in this case, this would be a 0, a tie, because the goalie stops that goal and that player, nothing happens. In this case, this team scores a goal against that goalie. Also, there is this special card here, Tiny Tim, has only half point, so he will lose in an encounter against most of the players, but as you can see, he's really tiny, they're not just saying. So he's particularly good at sneaking past goalies. So if he encounters a goalie, actually he will always win an encounter against a goalie. Also, a game never starts from a 0-0 situation. When you're challenging somebody, the person that is being challenged always starts with 1 goal and you always start with 0. It is a balancing mechanics. You know that when you're attacking somebody, you always start from a disadvantage, so you need to be comfortable and know or hope that you have a chance to overcome that. Also, if there is a tie at the end of the game, both players get their cards back. In this case, actually, if a card has been eliminated, the owning player gets a replacement immediately. Let's see, a replacement for that card would be this one, for example. So then the two players get their cards back and then they play another game. But what is pretty cool is that in this overtime situation, the winner is gonna be the player that scores the first goal. So actually, even a team that has worse cards may be able to win here if you play your cards well. And for example, first you commit a goalie and the other player committed a powerful card, then you stop that, then maybe you're able again to be able to stick in a good card and then the player does not expect that. But most likely the two players will play a goalie as the first or second card, or maybe the two goalies will be played at the beginning, then the better goalie is the winner. The players keep playing like this, scoring a point on this board for each game that they win, until one of the players goes to the playoffs. At that point, the second player goes to the playoffs too. The other players are eliminated. Then the players that went to the playoffs will start playing games against each other, and the winner of most games out of 7 games is going to be the winner of that game of Slapshot. Every time I taught the game to somebody, the person looked at me and was like, this seems a little mediocre. You get a card from the deck or from another player. you challenge another player, but it's also a random game. What's the point? And then after the game, everyone I played it with was, wow, I did not expect this game to be so much fun, because the game really is fun. At the beginning, maybe you're afraid that as two players are playing a game, everybody else is going to be bored, but this is not going to be the case. Everybody wants to give a very close look at what's going on, because you want to see the cards of the opponents. You want to figure out if a team is particularly strong, and in which case then you want to force the manager of that team to trade with you, or you want to see if a team is particularly weak, and then you want to target the team and challenge that team to. However, things will not always be this clear-cut, because you may have bruisers that will eliminate cards. Maybe the player of a team that you were targeting will manage to trade cards, get new cards. So by the time the game goes back to you, the team that you were targeting may not be as weak or as strong as you expected, and then there is a level of chance, and you're just pushing your luck a little. Also, there is a lot of interaction. You are entertained, and you're part of the game all the time. You're not just sitting there as the other players play, because other players will force you to trade, will challenge you to games, and it is your turn, you will challenge other people. You really are always part of the game. Through the games that you play, the challenges are not very strategic. A player in my group suggested maybe we can play it a card at a time. You see what the player played, figure out what the player still has in his hand, what may play next. Yes, it would make it deeper, but I think it would also kill the fun, which really the fun in this game is to see there's very fast-moving, fast-paced games that sometimes will come out with crazy results. You will have the weaker team that still wins because of the way in which the cards came out, the combinations of cards that came out. And so what? I love sport movies, and in sport movies this happens all the time. Revenge of the underdog. I don't have any problems with that. So it is a fun, fast-moving gameplay. Also, you still have those moments during the overtime in which you actually do have to strategize, because the first or second card that you're playing, when it's a matter of sudden death, that's really what matters. So I'd say that you still have those moments, but not so many that they will slow down the game. Most of the time people are just playing and having fun with these crazy games and trying to maximize their odds of being able to win the next game. Sometimes often you try to keep a low profile because you don't want people to steal cards from you. It is a fun game. Not the deepest game around, not a game that I think will be played in tournaments to test the skill of the players, but it is a game that everybody played it with, including me, was entertained from beginning to end. It is an extremely enjoyable game, and well, it may not be deep, but if people love it, it can be bad, right?